Space Marine Eradicators are gravis armored space marines equipped with melta rifles sent off to destroy the most dangerous enemy armor and monsters that they may come across. They are very elite warriors that are known for their ability to keep calm under pressure, especially in the face of such horrific monsters that exist in the 40k universe. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling. Today we are covering the Eradicators of the Space Marines. The Eradicators come in at 100 points for 3 or 200 points for 6. They have the standard gravis stat line of 5 inches of movement, which is slow but not agonizing. They are toughness 6, so very resilient to things like las guns, and also heavy bolters. With 3+ save and 3 wounds, they are very tough, at least on a per model basis, not necessarily per point. With leadership 6+ and OC1, they are just the standard gravis stat line. In terms of ranged weapons, they have bolt pistols, which are 12-inch range, one attack that hits on 3s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Really nothing special, but useful enough if you're in combat. The melta rifle is melta 2 and heavy, with 18-inch range, with one attack that hits on 3s at strength 9, AP 4, and damage d6. The multi-melta gains heavy, hits on 4s, and also is at 18-inch range. The melee weapon is just a close combat weapon, which is 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Their ability is very good. It's called Total Obliteration. When you make a ranged attack with models in this unit, target an enemy monster or vehicle, you can reroll the hit roll, reroll the hit wound roll, and reroll the damage roll. So very consistent, even though Melta is known for being quite swingy on whether or not it wounds, this does up its consistency dramatically and turns them into very effective armor hunters. The unit composition is very standard. It's 1 Eradicator Sergeant, and then 2 to 5 Eradicators. Every Eradicator is equipped with bolt pistol, melta rifle, and close combat weapon. They have the infantry, gravis, and grenades keyword, and for every 3 models in this unit, 1 Eradicator may replace their melta rifle with a multi-melta. This is generally worth the upgrade, I'd say, as even though they will be hitting slightly worse, you get double the attacks, so it evens out that most of the time you'll at least get 1 hit through, which means it's no different than a standard melta rifle. This is quite a solid anti-tank unit data sheet, effectively. And for the cost, they are pretty fragile, so they generally want to stay safe, either by using a transport or by making sure they only expose themselves when absolutely necessary. Anyways, let's move on to their buff options, which they have a few of. In terms of these buff options, we of course start off with the Apothecary Biologist, which grants them lethal hits, which is very handy for Melta, as it can struggle to wound very tough things, though it is less impactful in the Codex Compliant chapters, as when targeting the Oath of Moment units, you of course get +1 to wound. Of course, it does have slight overlap with their full rerolls thing, but getting the +1 to wound would usually be worth it, and with the reroll wounds, of course, it's still very effective. The Captain in Gravis armor brings free stratagems, which can be very impactful on things like Firestorm to get +1 to wound, or similar such things, Fire Discipline for extra AP, for example, and he does bring some very serious melee threat to the table, which allows them to fight enemy medium infantry very effectively. Then, moving on to the chapter specifics, though these are all Codex compliant, so they'll get the +1 to wound still. Ironfather Phyros gives you a Feel No Pain 5+, which is very nice for extra durability, and does help these guys a little bit, but they're still pretty squishy for their points, and he's better with a whole squad of heavy intercessors. Marnius Calgar and his bodyguards bring so much melee damage to the table, they might as well be their own unit outright. And so bringing some anti-tank firepower is definitely nice, and allowing them to advance and shoot is very good, because meltas are so famously short range and want to get into melta range as fast as possible, so having that extra d6 of movement with really no penalty is very, very useful. And of course, Marnius Calgar has enough melee to really hold his own no matter what. And then Tor Garadon of the Imperial Fists is kind of the premier armor hunting character of the Space Marines. His Artificer Grav Gun is pretty consistently going to be doing 8 damage to any vehicle it shoots at. And he does, of course, benefit from the rerolls to hit wound, though he doesn't have random damage, so that doesn't matter. So he's hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, rerolling everything, so very consistent. So if you have him in a unit of Eradicators, they will very, very quickly make short work of almost any vehicle in the game at range. And then Tor Garadon packs enough melee himself to charge into a unit and punch them to death with the Hand of Defiance, which is more than strong enough to effectively drop anything that isn't a knight in melee in 1 round of combat, and anything that is still alive will be so gravely wounded it won't be able to strike back nearly as effectively as if it were at full health. And of course, you could still chip the last couple wounds off with the flurry of attacks from the Eradicators, though that is, of course, asking quite a lot from them because they are not a melee unit. Next, we have to cover the detachments. We start off, of course, with the Gladius, which is very good. Gives them advance and shoot, is great if you need them to foot slog. Fire discipline is overkill on some targets, but against the toughest things around, like monoliths, for example, being able to remove their save completely is just simply invaluable. So you just force through all the d6 damages. Anvil Siege Force is definitely interesting, because if they are in position already, getting +1 to wound is just really, really good. Of course, if they're shooting the Oath target, it is redundant, but with their own rerolls, this is a great way to target other vehicles, as you'll still be getting your +1 to wound, which is so vital for Melta to be extra deadly. Iron Storm, I'd say they're pretty much completely pointless here. They don't get anything from the detachment rule, and don't get anything from the stratagems either, so not much purpose in running them there. In terms of Firestorm, Assault is fantastic, again letting you advance and shoot, and the extra strength is very good, allowing you to be much more effective against things like Predators, which would normally be wounded on 5s, would then be wounded on 4s. Stormlance gives you advance and charge, which of course this is not a melee unit, as I already mentioned, so there's not much purpose for them there. They could act as a solid enough sort of fire support role, but again, they wouldn't have Assault, so they wouldn't benefit from the detachment rule. In terms of Vanguard, does give them extra durability at range, which is nice if they're foot slogging, but given how close range their weapons are, they'll probably only have that buff comfortably for one turn, otherwise they'll just be staying too far back to be worth their points with the damage they'd be doing. First Company, they're not veterans. Librarius, they also have no access to Psychers, which would be very nice, because then of course you would have all the very good abilities that come with Librarius Conclave, but we don't have a Gravis Librarian yet. GW, make it happen. Moving on to the Divergent chapters, Dark Angels definitely come to mind as the First Legion. They don't have Deathwing or Ravenwing, so nothing there. And they could use Grim Retribution from the Unforgiven Task Force. If enough of them survive, it could be definitely worth ripping off another flurry of shots from your Melta weapons. And then Black Templars could give you a Feel No Pain, which would definitely be nice just to keep them in the fight that little bit longer, or an invulnerable save, depending on which detachment you're using. It's one or the other. Definitely pretty solid. And they act as good anti-tank support for a melee army like Black Templars. Pretty much the same thing for the Blood Angels, though with Liberator Assault groups buffs, they are actually pretty good at punching, light infantry to death, because they'll be wounding them on 2s. And aside from that, they fulfill a similar role as they do in the Black Templars, and pretty much the same thing in Space Wolves. The Feel No Pain is definitely nice, and they offer good frontline close support, which could be useful. Moving on to the next competition section, we have Devastators, who definitely I'd say are a worst unit, but if you're just looking for the maximum amount of multi-melta shots, the Devastators do have them beat, because they get 4 multi-meltas for a small unit, though of course if you bring a big unit of Eradicators, they win out there, as Devastators only get 4 special weapons. And the special rule of the Eradicators makes them far superior in almost every situation, unless you're investing very heavily into Devastators, i.e. bringing along some sort of enhancement and a Razorback to give them reroll wounds, which at that point they are quite good, but then again, you could just buy some Eradicators if you wanted to achieve a very similar thing for cheaper. Hellblasters are not direct competition, I call them parallel competition, because they're not competing for the same spot, but they can fill the same role. Hellblasters, of course, trade off pure anti-tank damage for more general-purpose damage, but of course, with that many plasma guns, you can still stack a lot of damage onto vehicles, though it's just not quite as savage as the Eradicators themselves, so you do have to keep that in mind when using them. But there isn't anyone that fills the exact same role as these guys, so I just thought I would list a couple that could. Moving on, the Eradicators are exactly what they say they are. There's not much to say about them. They do their job well. It's a simple mission. Go forward, melt tanks and monsters with your big fire damage. If you really want to assure destruction, bring a big full unit and slap on Torgaradon if you can, and watch enemy vehicles of any size be taken off the table like guardsmen. Of course, there really just isn't that much to say about them, and that's totally fine by me. They do their jobs with aplomb, and they do it very well. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.